Okay, we are going to have a quiz on Wednesday over just this section. 6 questions, already made it. The first 4 questions are a review from Algebra 2, which I'm going to go over right now. And then the last 2 are something with parabolas, which you guys are already familiar with. Chapter 9 talks about circles, parabolas, hyperbolas, ellipses. We'll get to that stuff after spring break. If you missed the test for Chapter 8, the makeup is Tuesday morning or Wednesday afternoon. If you cannot come to those, okay, fine. You'll have to do it after break. All right? I mean, time is fleeting, so we'll have to get it done. We'll have to get it in. If you're not ready for it because you are away, whatever, just, okay, fine. But the quiz on Wednesday is over just this section. So if you're sitting here right now, you should be able to take the quiz on Wednesday. You will be allowed a scientific calculator on the quiz. No graphing, but scientific is fine. So let's talk about circles for a second here. Everybody knows what a circle is? Everybody see it? Definition of a circle is a set of points that are equidistant from the center. Okay, here's a circle. Here is the center. Your center in the standard form of an equation, your standard is the h and k. You'll see that in a second. H is the x part, the part that goes with x. K is the part that goes with y. If you were given a center, given a point, and you're given a point on the circle, and they asked you to find the radius, what is the formula that you would use to find the radius? How long is the distance from the center to the radius? What formula would you use? The distance formula. If you're finding the length, you would use the distance formula. All right, say they gave you a problem, and they gave you a point over here and a point over here. And they said that this diameter runs through the circle. And you had to find the center. What formula would you use to find the middle of the circle? The midpoint, good. How do you find the midpoint, guys? You add x's divided by 2. You add y's divided by 2. So 2 formulas that you're going to use for a circle are the midpoint and the distance, depending upon the information that they give you. Now, let's talk about the equation of a circle in standard form. Okay, the equation of a circle in standard form is like this. You guys should know this. You will not be given this on your quiz. You should be familiar with this. It's x minus h, which is the x part of the vertex, squared, plus y minus k, which is the y part of the vertex, squared, equals radius squared. So there's a couple ways that you guys could see, God bless you, you could see a question. You might see a question that says, given, all right, let's just say, let me mix them up. You're given the center is -3, 4, and your radius is 5. Write the equation of the circle. So think about what they gave you. They gave you the h part, they gave you the k part, correct? So if I'm going to take that center and plug it into the formula, what would my first parenthesis be? X what? Why is it +3? Because it's minus a negative. Look at inside the formula, it's a minus. So minus a negative, this would be x plus 3 squared plus what? Y minus 4 squared equals what? 5 squared, which is 25. Okay, super simple. You guys can all handle that. Say you were given the equation. Say I give you this equation. X plus 5 squared plus y minus 9 squared equals 27. And I said, tell me what the center is. What's the center of the circle? Why are you guys telling me it's -5, +9? The signs change. Remember, in the standard form, there is a negative inside the formula. So when you take the center out, you have to change the signs. Same thing when you put it back in, because when you're minusing a negative, it becomes a positive. So this is actually a -5 that's in there. Just remember, when you're taking the center out or you're putting the center in, your signs change. And then what is your radius here? the square root of 27, would we leave it as the square root of 27? What does 27 break down into, guys? 9 times 3? So your radius would be 3 square root of 3. How come it's not plus or minus? You can't have a negative length. Good. Okay. All right, good. All right, so here's a question. Pretend there's not a picture, right? There's going to be no pictures on your quiz, so I need you guys to draw one. It says the point on the circle. The reason pictures are important, and especially when we get to parabolas, you guys are going to be like, oh, I need a picture. But pictures are important because you can visualize what they give you. They tell you that a point on a circle. Does it matter where I put the point? No, I'm just going to put my point right there. The point on the circle, 1, 4. And then they tell me, what's the other piece of information? They tell me the what? Read the question, guys. The center, okay? The center is -2, -3. They didn't tell me that the other endpoint of a diameter, so that we have to figure out what the center is. They already gave me half of the answer already. They told me the center of this circle is at -2, -3. That's the H part, and that's the K part of my formula, correct? The other thing I need is the radius. How would I figure out how far it is from the center to that point on the circle? The distance formula. Your x's and your y's, right? So the distance would be, my x's subtracted, so I have -2 minus 1 squared plus -3 minus 4 squared. Questions? What's -2 minus 1? -3 squared plus, what's -3 minus 4? -7 squared, all right. What's -3 squared? 9 plus 49, right? So your radius is the square root of 58. Everybody agree? Okay. So I have the square root of 58. Do you have the two pieces of information that you need to write your equation of your circle? Yeah. So your standard form, if you want, you can write down x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals radius squared. I'll go one step and actually write the minus and negative so you guys see it. I have x minus, what is your h value? It's -2 squared. Plus y minus, what is your k value? -3 squared. Equals the square root of 58 squared. Now clean that up, guys. Minus a negative is what? So this is x plus 2 squared. Plus, minus a negative is, so y plus 3 squared. And what happens when you square a square root? This will cancel, so just equals 58. And there's your equation of your circle in standard form. Questions? This should be a review. Hopefully you guys have seen this before. If you haven't, no big deal. It's okay. All right, your next example, this deals with circles. How do you know this deals with circles? Just by looking at it. I know it says circle. But if you didn't, if none of this was here, how would you know that this was a circle? Because what squared? X and the y. Good. Good. In a circle, your x and your y are squared. In a parabola, only one of them is going to be. That's good thinking. Now, you're going to want to identify the center and the radius. Is this written in standard form? No. Your standard form is this. X minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals radius squared. So how in the world can I get this equation into that form? Well, the way that we would do that is by completing the square. Some of you are like, oh, I've heard of that before. Some of you are like, what? Some of you are like, oh, I hated that, okay? It's really easy. Let me show you how it works. You want to collect your x's together. You want to collect your y's together. And you want to move constants to the other side. And we actually are going to draw squares, and we're going to complete them. We're going to put numbers in them. So watch. Get your x's together. I want x squared minus 6x, and then we're going to complete the square. Put a box. And then keep your y's together. So you have plus y squared minus 2y plus, we're going to complete the square. Want another box. And then what am I going to do with 6? I'm going to move it to the other side. So it becomes what? minus 6, okay? We are in the process of completing the square. The way that we complete the square, and this will make sense in just 1 second, you're going to take your b term. What is the b term with your x's? Your a term is 1. What's the b term? Negative 6, okay? You're going to take that b term, and you're going to say negative 6 divided by 2, and that's going to tell you everything you need to know. What's negative 6 divided by 2? Negative 3, okay? So we are going to create a binomial right here. What letter do you think is going to go in the front of my binomial? X. What number do you think is going to go inside my binomial? Minus 3, and then I'm going to square it. I'm going to take this negative 3 and I'm going to square it. What is negative 3 squared? So I'm going to put it right there in that box. What you guys just did, those two things are now the same. X squared minus 6x plus 9 is the same as x minus 3 quantity squared. Now, one more step, guys. What you add or subtract, what you do to one side of the equation, you have to do where? So if I add 9 to the left-hand side, I have to add 9 to the right. Somebody asked me last period, is it always adding? Yes, because what happens when you square a negative number becomes positive. Good. All right, so now I'm going to complete the square over here with the y's. I'm going to take that b term again. What is my b term? Negative 2, and I'm going to divide it by 2. And it's going to tell me everything I need to know. What's negative 2 divided by 2? What kind of 1? Negative 1, okay? So my parenthesis here was going to start with what letter? Y. What's going to go inside my parenthesis with it? Minus 1. And what do I do to that binomial? I square it. So when I square this, what is negative 1 squared? What is it? 1. And then what you do to one side, you do where? To the other. God bless you. Do you guys now see how we're starting to form the standard form of our circle? Yes? Can you tell me now what the center is? Yep, you sure can. We'll finish the problem here in a second. But what do you do on the right-hand side? What's negative 6 plus 9? 3 plus 1 is 4. You now know everything about the circle. What is the center? Your center's at what? When you take it out of the equation, what do you do to the signs? So it's at 3, 1, and what is your radius? 2. Perfect. How'd you get 2? You take the square root, because in the formula, it's radius squared. So when you complete the square, guys, we're going to do it again in a minute. We'll do it some more tomorrow. You're going to get your x's together, get your y's together, move constants to the other side. And then you just take that b term. You divide the b term by 2, and that's what goes in the parenthesis, and then you square it. That's what goes in the box. Every time. Every time. All right? We're okay? All right, next question. You guys have been doing this since probably the 8th grade. How do you find x and y intercepts algebraically? You plug in 0, right? So if I want to find the x-intercept, now there'll be no graphing on this quiz, so you don't have to worry about that. But if I'm finding the x-intercept, what number am I plugging in for y? 0. So 0, just kidding, x minus 4 squared plus, instead of y, I'm putting 0. Excuse me, 0 minus 2 squared equals 16. Agreed? Okay, guys, algebra. Here we go. Keep your x minus 4 squared. What is 0 minus 2? Okay, and then negative 2 squared is 4 equals 16. Now what? Subtract 4 from both sides. So you have x minus 4 squared equals 12. Now there's nothing else I can do. My parenthesis is all by itself. Now what? How do you get rid of the squared? Take the square root. So you have x minus 4 equals, what goes in front of a square root? Plus or minus. We're not talking about distance here. We're talking about points on a graph. And then now what? Add 4. So x equals 4 plus or minus the square root of 12. What do you think I'm going to tell you to do here? Simplify what? Square root of 12. This is the same as 4 times 3, right? Yes? So it's x equals 4 plus or minus 2 root 3. Your circle is going to cross the x-axis at 2 places. 4 plus 2 square root of 3 and 4 minus 2 square root of 3. Am I asking you to graph that? No. If you were going to write that as intercepts, it would be 4 plus minus 2 root 3, comma, what number did we plug in for 0, for y? 0. There's your intercept. Just a basic algebra problem. You will solve that the same way every time. You plug in 0 for one of the letters, get the binomial by itself, end up taking the square root, and then that's it. So once we find the x-intercept, now what do we have to find? The y-intercept. Well, does the process change at all? No, what's the only thing that changes? You're going to plug in 0 for x. So I take my same equation. I have 0 minus 4 squared plus y minus 2 squared equals 16. What is 0 minus 4? Negative 4. What's negative 4 squared? 16. Okay, so you have 16 plus y minus 2 squared equals 16. You want to get that binomial by itself, so what are you going to do? Okay, subtract 16 from both sides. We like when this happens. You have y minus 2 squared equals 0. What do? Take the square root. All right, is there such a thing as plus minus 0? No, so you just have y minus 2 equals 0. Now what? Add 2 to both sides, so y equals what? 2. How would you write that as an intercept? When I plugged in 0, I got out 2. So how many intercepts total are there? 3. 2 x's, 1 y. What would happen, guys, if you did all this work, whatever, and you came out to, just say it said x plus 3 squared equals negative 5? Right? If I took the square root of both sides, what do you notice about that? It's impossible. It's imaginary. So what would that tell you about that intercept? There would be none. That is a possibility that it doesn't cross the x or y axis. That's fine. Same with when we tried to find intercepts and we got negatives in our parabolas and it didn't, you got a negative, that just meant it doesn't touch. So don't be alarmed by that. That just means, oh, there is no intercept. Questions. All right, of the 6 questions on your quiz, that's 4 of them. Tomorrow in class, I'm going to go through just a bunch of practice problems to get you ready. Very, very straightforward, I promise you. I'm going to start spring break off with a bang. You're like, yeah, you're funny. Okay, parabolas. Are we familiar with parabolas? Yep, we've seen these a lot of times. We call them quadratics, right? We are familiar with the parabolas that say f of x equals x squared. Agreed? What's another way of saying f of x? We're familiar with the y equals x squared parabolas. What direction do they open? Up or down, right? Positive opens up, negative opens down. We're also going to be talking about some sideways parabolas. What do you think the equation of a sideways parabola is? If the up and down is y equals x squared, what do you think the left and right one is? X equals y squared. Perfect. This is our left and right. What do you think? Okay, so up and down. Up is positive, down is negative. With left and right, what do you think is positive? What do you think is negative? Right is positive. It opens up towards the positive numbers. And so what is left? Perfect. Good. Now, I cannot impress upon you enough, guys, the importance of drawing a picture. You draw a tiny little picture with these problems, and your life is so much easier. We're going to talk about different words here, right? Everybody knows what a vertex is, right? There's your vertex. It's like your center of a circle. It's the center of your parabola. So your vertex is your h and your k value. That's going to be important. In order to write the equation of a parabola, you need to have your h and your k. we've written the vertical ones before. F of x equals a parenthesis x minus h squared plus or minus k, right at the end. Same thing. Now, there's two things that are new here. What is new is this word right here. What is that word? Focus. And then this word down here is called directrix. All right, this is really, really simple, I promise. What I want you to write down here is your parabola opens towards the focus, and it opens away from directrix. Why is that important? Because they're going to tell you that the focus is at blah, 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 blah. So when you draw your picture, if they give you the focus, your parabola opens towards that. It should be inside the bowl. If they tell you the equation of the directrix, that means it should be away from it. You'll see that in a second. Your directrix is always written as an equation. It'll be either x equals or y equals a line. Just x equals 3, y equals 2, whatever. Always. All right, so here are the standard form. You guys need to know these. All right? If you look at this, you can tell a lot by this equation. They look very similar, correct? How are they a little different? One's up and down, one's left and right. How do you know the direction just by looking at them? If it's up and down or left and right? All right, if it's x squared, guys, which way? Do you see how it's x minus h? If it's x squared, which way is this parabola opening? Up, good, or down. If it's a y squared, which way? Left or right, good. Now, notice if it's an x squared, or it's a y squared, do you see how x's switch places? So does the h and the k. The h always stays with the x part of the vertex. The k always stays with the y part. So just pay attention to that. And something else that's a little different that you guys haven't seen before is what variable? P. All right? P tells you right here. It's a directed distance. All P is the distance from vertex to focus. You can almost think of it as kind of like a radius in a sense of it's from the center to a point. It's not on the parabola. Now, another important piece of information. The focus and directrix are equidistant from vertex, just opposite directions. What I mean by that. Okay? I'm going to tell you guys to draw a picture. All right, they're going to tell you the vertex is at whatever. Here's my vertex. They might tell you that your focus, say this is at, I don't know, -2, 4, right? They might tell you your focus is at -2. That's not right, the way I wrote that. This would be 4, -2. They might tell you that your focus would be at 4 or 5. Why is that important information? That tells you a lot. What is that telling you? Okay, well, think about this. Where would 4 or 5 be? Before it'd be like around here, right? Why is that important? Well, first of all, it's telling you it opens which direction? Up. You know it's this way. So you know right away it's a positive what kind of parabola? X squared or y squared? X squared. Good. Your focus and your directrix are equidistant from each other, just in opposite direction. So if the focus is here, then your directrix is down here, but the same space away. All right? If they tell you the directrix, then you know to draw your parabola, it opens the opposite direction. I'm telling you, a picture will make your life so much easier. This illustrates that, but it doesn't really kind of resonate with us until we actually put it into a problem. So let's look at, I have 2 examples I want to do. Then you guys have some web assigned stuff to work on. We're going to work on stuff tomorrow. This is the stuff that you have to think just a little bit. Watch how easy it is if you don't look at this. You will not have a picture on your quiz. So let's draw one. It says find the standard form of the equation of a parabola with a vertex at the origin and the focus at 0, 4. So first of all, we don't even know what kind of a parabola this is. We don't know if it should be x squared. We don't know if it should be y squared. So the first thing I'm going to tell you guys to do every time is to draw a picture. Where is the vertex? It's at the origin, right there. So you know your vertex is at 0, 0, correct? So your h value is this, your k value is that. That's important information. Another very important piece of information is either the focus or the directrix. Where is the focus? It's at 0, 4. Well, where is that point? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Why is that so important? It tells you it's going which direction? What did Jeremy just say? Up, because your parabola opens towards the focus. Your focus will be inside the bowl. So what that just told me is this is what kind of a parabola? X squared or y squared? It's an x squared, good. And it also told me the p-value. How far is the vertex from the focus? 4 units. And I know it's a positive 4 because I know it's opening which direction? Up. What about if they told you the directrix was at y equals negative 4? You would draw a line like this, right? And you would still have your parabola going the same way. Why? Because the parabola opens which way? Towards the focus and away from the directrix. So now that you have all of this in your mind, you can go, oh, okay, I need to use the equation that starts with x minus h squared, right? Equals 4p times y minus k. If it was a y squared, you would use y minus k squared equals, and that's how you figure that out. Does that make sense? But that's really hard to do, guys, if you don't draw yourself that little picture. If you draw yourself a little picture, life is a lot easier. If you don't, then it's hard. So now let's just plug in what we know. We can say, okay, I have x minus 0 squared equals 4 times what? 4. And then y minus 0. Would we leave it like that? Whoops. No. Yeah. So what's x minus 0? X. So you have x squared equals, what's 4 times 4? 16. What's y minus 0? That's it. When you're not adding or subtracting anything to the x and the y, then you know it's 0, 0. Or one of them is 0. We'll practice it more, I promise. It's part of the formula. You have to know P is the distance between the focus and the vertex, or the directrix and the vertex, just depending upon. I always say the focus because that's the way that your parabola opens. All right, next question. Find the focus. Well, that means you have to have it in standard form. This is not in standard form. But there are some things you can already tell me about this parabola. Is it a vertical one or a horizontal one? Is it an x squared or a y squared? How do you know it's x squared? Because it's the only thing that's squared, all right? Right, guys, find the clues in the problem. What do you notice about the x squared value? It's negative, so this is opening which way? Good, look at that. You guys figured out already. You already know, okay, it's going to go this way, right? That's helpful information. Now, what could we do? First of all, how many of us are like, yes, fractions, I just love them? Nobody. How can I get rid of all these fractions? I'm going to multiply the whole thing by what number? 2. All right. So let's go through, multiply everything. So I have 2y equals negative x squared minus 2x plus 1. Everybody agree? Well, you told me, guys, that this was an x squared parabola. So that means my x's should be on which side of my equation? Right? I want it to model. You guys just told me this was an x squared, which I totally agree with you. So we got to get this in standard form. So where do I need to move my x's? To the left. And where do I need to move my y's? To the right. So do you guys agree with me? If I move these x's over here, they both become positive, correct? Okay, so x squared plus 2x equals, if I move that 2y over here, it becomes what? Okay, so negative 2y plus 1. All right, I need it to look like this, but it looks like this. What did we do when our circle looked like this, but we needed it to look like that? Look back at that problem. What did we do? We completed the square. Good. Anything in a problem like this, anything that's squared and then also has a term, anything that's squared, you're going to have to complete the square to get it into standard form. So if I'm going to complete the square, I take this b term and I divide it by what? Okay, so I have x squared plus 2x plus the box, right? Equals negative 2y plus 1. So when I divide 2 divided by 2, that tells me everything I need to know. 2 divided by 2 is 1. All right, so what is going to go inside my parenthesis here? Okay, so plus 1. And this is squared, right? When I square this, 1 squared is 1. What you do to one side, you add to the other. So then I have equals negative 2y plus 2. All right, we're really close. We're really close. My left-hand side looks good. But the right-hand side, I need my y to be in a parenthesis with another number, but have a positive 1 coefficient. So this is x plus 1 squared. What could I do? Can I factor out a negative 2? Yes, I could say negative 2. And then what do I get here? Y minus 1. All right, guys, that will happen every single time. When you have a parabola problem like this and you have to complete the square, every time you complete the square and move something over, you'll be able to factor this. If you can't, you did something wrong. So here is the standard form of our parabola. So let's identify everything. I know it says the focus. We'll talk about that in a second. But let's identify everything. What is the vertex? It's negative 1, 1. Perfect. Now the focus. Let's talk about the focus. Your parabola opens towards the focus, right? It's a point. And your directrix is a line that opens away from it. Now let's think about this for a second, guys. We drew a picture so we could see. This is my parabola. You said it's at negative 1, 1, so negative 1, positive. Well, here's my parabola. And you told me it was negative, right, from the beginning? God bless you. Okay. So my focus is inside here, correct? And my directrix is out here. All right. So how would you figure out how far it is from here to here? What's that value? It's the p-value, right? So in your formula, guys, where is the p-value? It's right here, right? Is p negative 2? Look at the formula. 4p equals negative 2, right? So what would you do to both sides? Divide by 4. So you found out that your p-value is negative 1/2. So some of you are like, oh, what does that even mean? What is she talking about? P is what? Tell me what p is. Articulate it to me. It's the distance from where? The vertex to the focus. So if you're not drawing this picture, this is hard to see. But my vertex is opening up and down. So the point of the focus is not negative 1/2 1. It's 1/2 below that. So what would I subtract 1/2 from? The x value or the y value? If it's moving down. The y value. Which value goes up and down? It's the y. So your focus is at negative 1 comma what? 1/2. It moved down a little bit. Your directrix is a line. Which does it go through? The x value or the y value? The y-axis or the x-axis? It's going through the y, right? So it's y equals. It's above the vertex. So where would you add 1/2 to? The x or the y? The y. So what's 1/2 plus 1? 3/2. This is hard to visualize when it's fractions. That is the hardest thing that you guys are going to have to do is visualize that. If you had a question like this, let's just say 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. So here's my vertex at 3 comma negative 2, okay? And we figured out that the p-value was negative 4. And I want you guys to tell me the focus and the directrix. We're going to do two, I'm just making up 2 examples. We're going to do 2 of them now. Now, if you don't draw the picture, this is hard to see. So here, I'm going to draw this make-believe picture. This is my parabola. So right away, what is being affected to find your focus and your directrix? The y value or the x value? Which way does your parabola open? Up and down. What is the coordinate that handles up and down? The y. So your focus is going to be, actually it should be upside down since I made it negative. Right, since this value is negative. Your focus is going to be inside the parabola or outside the parabola? Inside the parabola. So what are you going to do with this point here? This is my x, this is my y. Where is your focus? Your focus is at 3 comma what? Negative 6. How'd you get that? Good. If this is your vertex and you're going down inside your focus, it's at whatever the p distance is. So your directrix is up here. It's a line. What is it going through? Which axis? The y-axis. It's above your parabola. So it's going to be a line at y equals what? 2. Very good, Cassie. Where'd you get 2 from? You added it to the y. Good. If you had a parabola, say you had a problem like this. Right, here's my parabola and here's the vertex. At 2, I don't want to do, let's do. Your vertex is at negative 3, 2. And it's opening this way. And your p-value is 7. All right, so your focus and your directrix. Think about this. How is your parabola opening? Left and right or up and down? Left and right. What's the axis that goes left and right? The x-axis. So your focus, guys, is inside your parabola. So if the distance from your vertex to your focus is 7, where are you adding 7 to? The negative 3 or the 2? The negative 3. What's negative 3 plus 7? So your focus would be at 4, 2. Your directrix is in the opposite direction. It's a line in the opposite direction. So what axis is it going through? The x-axis. And instead of adding 7 to the x, you're going to do what? Subtract it. So what's negative 3 minus 7? What's negative 3 minus 7? Negative 10. It all depends. You have to draw the picture and think to yourself, okay, the p-value is the distance away from the vertex to the focus and to the directrix, just different directions. If you're moving to the right or moving up, you're adding. If you're moving to the left or down, you're subtracting. But think about that. That's how the coordinate plane works. Left and down are negative numbers. Right and up are positive numbers. Does that make sense? All right, I want you guys to work on your WebAssign, your parabola problems a lot tonight. I did not make this WebAssign due till Wednesday. I'm going to do more problems with you tomorrow in class. But this is the only problem where you actually have to think a little bit. And it's not really that hard. You just have to think a little bit. But you guys can handle it, I promise.